I wanted to mention was I want you to read this section on sustainability. I didn't discuss that with you in class in much detail, but that's an important part of the geographic environment. So just read that unit on sustainability, and there's a video that goes with that as well, right? Canada's top countries trade and investment. I didn't do this with you this summer because there wasn't enough time to do it, but this is basically a discussion of the top companies in Canada, which are, unlike the Americans, not manufacturing things. They don't make things like Microsoft and Apple. They're mostly banks. The cultural environment, that's something one person in the group should make sure that they cover for the final report, to have some discussion about how the cultural environment affects the company that you're doing your business plan for. We talked about Hofstede in the context of how you look at a country, whether they're masculine or feminine, or rich people or poor people, or uncertainty avoidance. And there's a video discussing that. Then we got into viral marketing, and the whole point about viral marketing was to explain that this is one of the ways that small companies can get exposure and advertising for their product with spending little as money as possible. And the reason why they need to do that is in order to be able to quickly grow, and they can't grow unless they sell. And part of being able to get people to know about their product is to have advertising, but you can't pay for it if you're a small company. So the way you get around that is by creating viral video things that go on YouTube and Google and get more exposure. And guerrilla marketing was a word that I tried to explain to you in the context of some really small group of people doing something that has a big effect on a larger group of people. Then we started to talk about ethics and bribery, and you should read that whole section on ethics, talking about the different ethical situations, because at one point in your final report there should be some commentary on how ethics has influenced companies. And we also talked about the different stances of defensive, accommodative, proactive stance, and corporate social responsibility. And then the whole subject of whistleblowers. And then this was a little story that I didn't have a chance to tell you. It's about how Toyota created an unethical situation with their car accelerator pedal sticking, and many people had a traffic accident and died. And they were not very cooperative in telling the American authorities what the problem was, until I was interviewed on BNN News and told them it was the problem with the event data recorders. So if you watch this short video, you'll learn about what an event data recorder is. It's a fancy way for what they call a black box in an airplane. Okay, we talked about stakeholders, and this is about marketing orientation for business. So you know about product orientation and a sales orientation, right? So product orientation is when you sell something based on the features of the product. A sales orientation is when you say buy this because it's $10 and normally $15. But a marketing orientation is when you ask people about what they're like and interested in. And the reason why you use that in international business is because you have to talk to people. You have to ask questions. You have to find out what they're really interested in. So a big part of being successful in international business is being successful in communicating. That's why we talk so much about cultural stuff. International trade theories, we're not going to do that. This is first mover, second mover advantages. It's about me talking about how sometimes big companies can start off big but end up being in second place, like Yahoo. Why is Google number one? How did it replace Yahoo? And that's a discussion of that. And then the point about the embassies and the consulates and high commission and what they're for and the purpose of them. And political risk and contingency planning. So this is a video that I made last year. Basically, when the COVID thing came down, I went out in the woods and I built a fire with my dog, and I sat there for about 2 hours making about 15 videos. And I'm talking about contingency planning and solving problems and how to be effective at that. Because more and more times when people go for job interviews these days, they don't care if you're a very smart person. They just want to know if you've got imagination, you could think about help fixing a problem. Because a lot of companies these days realize that to be successful, it's not about doing the right thing. It's about being able to fix problems. And you need to hire people who are smart at fixing problems. And political risk and contingency planning, I'm talking about the difference between pure risk and speculative risk. And then this is all about the personal risk of traveling overseas with grab bags and things like that. And then you get into talking about government being a customer. The reason I discussed that is because selling directly to the consumer, B2C, it can be very frustrating sometimes. And in order for a company to grow and be successful, it's good to have government as customers because they pay better and you can have a long-term relationship with them. And then we talked about some of the ways that government influences trades through different trade barriers and rules and regulations. So if you just click on that link, it goes to the list of things like tariffs, subsidies, dumping, and so on, and binational policies. And you should read that whole list going right down to the bottom there about that's where the story of the raisins comes from. Dumping in the CBSA. The reason I mention this is because it's a very good example showing within 1 minute 10 seconds what it is. I would like the students to think about how they could make a little video for me like this so I could add you guys in 2021. Then some more things about the geographic environment. This one here, which I didn't watch with you, but is very important because it contains a lot of the things about contingency planning, talking about the tyranny of quarterly earnings, identifying who does what in a contingency plan. And then this is talking about the map situations. There's 3 videos. There's one here talking about Canada, US. Then there's one talking about North America versus Europe. And this one about the whole sort of world population. And then indicators of economic supremacy. Now, the other thing we didn't get to today was the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. The purpose is to collect trade information from different countries and allow them to do business with each other. And so what the OECD does is it gathers statistics on things like education. And for example, they'll find out in Canada only 49% of men go to college or university, whereas 65% for women. Why is that? And the OECD also will provide reports on things. So if you want to make a decision about should I move to Thailand or Vietnam or Burma or Indonesia, which is the best country for me to do business, it'll say something like, well, the population of Vietnam is younger and more likely to be college, university educated compared to Indonesia. Indonesia is a much larger country, but it's broken up into small islands and so on. For next class, we'll talk a little bit about the World Trade Organization. We'll talk about some things to do with foreign exchange and the IMF. We'll talk about collaborative relationships. And then another prof is going to get into things like TQM and GIT, just in time, and so on. So that catches you up to all the things. So just go read through my website. Just don't get casual because you don't have to actually have a physical textbook. Take time to read some of the things on there. Thank you very much, and I'll stop that right now and put that on YouTube for you.